So, I got some stuff I want to say with my mouth to all other people whose early exposures to overloads of adrenaline and cortisol in their brains as children reset their baseline. Because, like a normal person, when they get freaked out by something, their cortisol fires and they're like, oh, here's, cortisol's firing, adrenaline, I'm shaking afterwards, it feels weird, fight or flight, fight or flight, fight or flight. And then it goes back down. From the serotonin makes it go back down to normal level, which is here, right? But if you've lived your entire life, especially when your brain was still forming as a very young human being on the planet, say infancy to 7 years old, if your flood of cortisol and adrenaline was constantly like this in your face, your baseline becomes here. So your serotonin levels are a lot smaller than normal people who don't experience that kind of like constant fight or flight, rewiring your brain from an early age kind of shit, right? So, that being said, you're always on high alert and you're used to being on high alert. And all that cortisol and adrenaline constantly pulsing through your system is basically like flooding your whole body with battery acid and bleach, or I don't know, other toxic chemicals that are debilitating you in the long run. That's why people who experience early trauma don't tend to live as long, because their bodies have so much damage on the inside that you can't see. There's no proof for, because it's internal, right? Okay. So, due to the fact that our cortisol levels and our brain wiring is all fucked up from day one, people like us, we tend to compensate in our brains by wiring around the cortisol, which is why we become highly sensitive and empathic, because we've grown up paying attention to all the energies around us for our own survival. This is ingrained in us. Like we can't not pay attention to the energy around us. We're on high alert to energy constantly. And this is also why we tend to be the people that are a lot more in tune with weird, witchy, woo woo shit that, normal, well adjusted, untraumatized people think is just bullshit. They don't get it. And they're never going to get it because their brains are not wired. They don't have the extra cones in their eyeballs to see those extra colors that highly sensitive people see. This is also why in trauma we tend to spend a lot more time alone as children or as adults or as people in general, because our own internal safety net is coming from inside, because we were the only ones we had to protect ourselves, most likely. And that's also why we're more in tune to ghosty ghosts and other types of beings and hearing stuff, signals from the ether sphere, that normal people with no trauma, who didn't have to spend a ton of time alone comforting themselves and crying themselves to sleep every night alone, with their little stuffed kitties, wishing they could just wear underwear, but their parents wouldn't let them wear underwear. This is why you don't get it. That's why, people like me seem like total nutcases to you, because you could never understand what we have to go through in order to survive, number one, and then as adults, in order to keep surviving. Because all through your 20s and 30s and 40s, pretty much, it's like you're readjusting to the world without that constant threat, but that constant threat is still there because it's in your brain. And now you have to figure out how to see other people as not a threat. And that's very difficult to rewire your entire brain, okay? It is possible through lots of work. Change is possible, it's your people are capable of understanding cognitive dissonance and be able to take accountability for certain distorted perceptions that they may or may not have had of other people due to that level of fight or flight, everyone's a threat thinking that makes you see everybody as a potential person that might kill you at any second. You don't know. So their faces warp into like disdain, or they just don't look friendly. They don't feel friendly because you're so on high alert to how other people are going to treat you, that after you're out of those dangerous situations as a child, it actually distorts your perception of other people. And then you have to rewire that as well. You have to learn how to see other people as not potentially your murderers. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And a lot of people don't make it this far because they've either killed themselves, or they've died of drug overdoses, or they're incarcerated in prison where they're never going to get any help. Or maybe afterwards they might, or during, maybe they might, but most likely they're imprisoned in some way, or they're sucking dick on the street and murdered, thrown in a garbage can, shit like that. Not a lot of people that go through extreme amounts of stress and trauma in their brains ever make it to the point where they become educated enough that they can understand their own wiring and the fact that they need to change it themselves, because no one else is ever going to do it for them. You could go to therapists and stuff, but in order to have a good therapist, you have to trust that relationship. And that, my friend, is extremely hard to do when you don't trust other people to then trust your therapist enough to let your beans spill with them and figure out what parts of your conscious and subconscious need rewiring and what parts need help. In general, you end up doing all that yourself as well, because you really know you. You know you more than anyone else ever will. And you will also love and hate yourself more than anyone else ever will. Which for some of us is a huge relief to hear, because that's a lot easier to deal with than the perceived hatred that we may be receiving from others. I mean, in my case personally, I assume everyone hates me all the time. And that's why I am so avoidant of hanging out with other people. And that's been really hard to overcome. And now, after the conversation I had the other day, where I'm actually crying and going, why do you hate me so much? Just bawling like a little kid. I don't understand why you hate me so much. And now I know there's the root. That was the root of all of that. My inability to function around other people in groups or in large numbers or even in small numbers, and my inability to just not have my default set at everyone hates you. Everyone hates you and wants you to die. Everybody hates you and wants you to die. This is where I grew up, in that place, right? Knowing that as an adult, I can change it, right? Hypothetically, yes, but it's still Little things are still going to come up where I'm like, wait a minute, not everybody hates me. It's actually a relief when you are old enough to discover most people don't give a fuck. And to have the energy, the time or the energy to plot your demise, or take stuff away from you. I mean, shit's gonna happen anyway, but it doesn't have to be like, it's not that serious. You'll probably kill yourself with your terrible thoughts a lot easier and a lot more devastatingly than anyone else out there ever will. The enemy is in here, you see. So, that being the case, when synchronistic shit happens to you and you're a highly sensitive person and you notice these things around you, for example, I have this evil eye crystal that I wear on my throat chakra to assist me with speaking my truth. Now, whether or not anybody else wants to agree with my truth, that's their problem. This is my truth, and I'm allowed to speak it because I'm a human being, and I have just as much right to be here on the planet Earth as any other asshole jerk in the world. I can say what I want to say too, just like everyone else can say what they want to say. And the fact that my throat was so closed up all day yesterday, like I literally felt like this. And then my string on my thing broke today. The synchronicity of this is what is making people who don't want me to talk they want me to shut up, stop talking, stop speaking my truth, and just fall in line so that I can be easily controlled. And this is a problem I've had with all my bosses. This is the problem I have with all forms of authority. This is the problem that will just keep mirroring itself and mirroring itself until it's healed. Or that I can accept it. I accept that I have a problem with responsibility because I am now allowing myself to speak my truth. I am letting my throat chakra activate. I mean, if you got motherfucking fascist assholes out there who can say whatever the fuck they want to say and nobody seems to want to cut them down or, watch them starve to death or kick them to the curb or, then I have a right to say what I want to say too. And I am allowing myself to say these things because I can and because I owe it to myself and all of my former selves that were not allowed to speak. So I'm going to keep talking, whether other people like it or not. If you don't like what I'm saying, and you don't resonate with it, and you don't agree with it, you think I'm making it all up, or you think I'm delusional, or you think I'm just doing stuff for attention. I had to go into that one too, and I did, because I remember when I was 12, and I was the fat, ugly girl. I was always the new girl, because we were always moving to new schools. I was the fat, ugly girl that nobody liked. So I became kind of the clown in class, And I had to grab on to whatever I could to feel self-respect. And for a lot of scapegoats as well, anybody who's a scapegoat in their family, you don't even need to ask yourself, geez, am I the scapegoat? You'll know if you're the scapegoat. Those times that you've been scapegoated by other people most likely started also very early in life. The reason that it keeps happening to you your whole life is because being the scapegoat was the only time you could feel proud of yourself or felt like you were performing some kind of function for other people and that they valued you because they needed a scapegoat. And if it was being needed as a scapegoat was better than being totally ignored. So that you had to hold on to as your proud moments of taking on other people's pain and responsibility for other people's problems and trying to help everybody around you all the time and ignoring your own needs in favor of helping other people because you're trying to go back to that place where that was your first initial feeling of I'm a good person. I can belong too because I'm a scapegoat and I can do this for other people. And again, when this starts to activate in your throat and you start speaking and saying things like what's happening all over the world right now, where girls know enough self defense and, you know, court cases are happening left and right. People are no longer putting up with shit. Domineering, narcissistic people can't get away with being domineering, narcissistic people who could just abuse everybody around them. Now they're being held accountable. And that is so nice to see. Because in the 80s when I grew up, incest, I mean, incest was a word I had to spell to my parents because they didn't know what it meant. I did because I was in it. They were doing it and they didn't know what that word meant. So I had to spell it out for them. And no one ever talked about that shit in the 80s. It was like they were just like Jennifer Jason Leigh was maybe just starting to make movies with that as a subject in it, or some of the films that were coming out in the 80s were like the very first inklings of anyone talking about this shit, even though it's been going on since the dawn of mankind. Now it's coming to light, just like so many other things in our society are coming to light now. So many other things that we have done to other people are coming to light and revealing, and it's necessary for the rebalancing of this planet and humanity as a whole, for the meek to inherit the earth and speak our truths, right? That doesn't mean embracing your victimhood. That means transmuting your trauma into your strength and having a right to speak for those who died in the process, because there's so many of them that are dead and never got to say anything. So just put yourself in their shoes and say all things they wanted to say that they never got to say. If you ever get a little bit wishy-washy about, well, I don't know, I should say anything in this situation. When I go back to Trenton in my head and I think of all those girls I was in that group therapy session with when I was 14, and how many of those girls were sitting there pregnant with their own dad's babies in their bellies, I speak for them whenever I feel my throat chakra getting choked like I did yesterday. And I hold them in my heart because this is the kind of pain no one should ever have to go through, and yet we go through it. And hopefully, if we survive it, we can live long enough to see some kind of accountability happen in the world as a whole. But only if we keep an eye on our throat chakra and don't let other people choke us. Every time I've ever been in a relationship with somebody, or even some of my formerly good friends in school as a child, constantly getting choked. My throat chakra was always a target. Always. People were always choking me. I was always getting choked. It's not a sexual, enjoyable fantasy for me. I fucking hate it. And it was constantly happening. Just from random people to boyfriends to good friends in school getting a fight with me, they would just go for my neck. Like choking. So yesterday when I was like, couldn't breathe for a long time, and my heart was like palpitating the whole time during that conversation. I've been taking enough classes in shaman school now to understand what's going on with my body when it's going through those kinds of physical reactions to that much of a tsunami of emotion. And right here, it's why That's why I am still talking. And no motherfucker is going to stop me. So, get used to it. Feel free to turn the channel if you don't like what I'm saying. Feel free to push stop. But yeah, see what I mean? It'll come back. I've been fighting it off for a while now. A good 24 hours. Pretty hardcore. But being the advocate for your own well-being is where it all starts. I'm glad I got through this whole conversation with myself on the phone without crying, because I thought I might. But I'm also learning slowly how to master my emotions and not let them take over and derail me, because oftentimes they can, make me stay in bed for 4 days in a row or whatever. But no, I'm getting better. The longer I spend away from people that treat me like a piece of shit, or make me feel like I should just die, so there's my tell. Good to know. Good to know. If somebody makes me feel like I want to off myself, I should probably not talk to them, not hang out with them. Moving forward, we're just gonna use that as a general gauge. If somebody makes me feel like I want to shoot myself in the head, I am gonna walk away. Keep singing. Plop. Ploppy, ploppity, ploppity, plop. Yes, plesh, ploosh. Yes, plesh,